In Agile, we don't define all of our baselines up front as we do in the PMI model in the PMBOK guide. They don't speak of even defining the WBS, which would be the heart and soul, the planning step that needs to be accomplished before you do the schedule, before you do the cost baseline. And it's the heart and soul and one of the key parts of the scope baseline itself. So we don't do these things up front. Well, let's put it this way. We don't do them for the project overall. Within each sprint, we do have baselines, right? So each sprint is 2 to 4 weeks, so we definitely know what the schedule is for the sprint. We know we've got a dedicated team of 7 to 8 resources, so we probably know what our costs are, labor costs, tools and equipment, so we probably know the cost for each sprint. And similarly, we've defined what the product backlog will be that's going to be achieved in each sprint. So we've got a scope baseline within each sprint, but we don't know how many sprints we're going to do. We don't know how many iterations it's going to take to get to where we want to end up at the end of the project. So therefore, we can't project out and have baselines for the project overall. And without that, we can't do earned value as it's traditionally conceived. We need a detailed cost baseline, really all 3 baselines, the performance measurement baseline. We need that all detailed out up front so we can do the type of specific earned value measurements. So let's look at another slide and see how this really truly works. In order to use earned value methodology, we have to be able to put together very accurate baselines, especially the cost baselines, very early on in the project. And the best way for PMI to depict our cost baseline is as a time phase budget or as an S-curve. And so as we're seeing here for this simple project, which is starting on October 1st, of 2011, it's going to go until the middle of April of 2012. So in early October, our costs start out low. We don't have that many people involved in the early design phases. We are not using many tools or equipment or leasing rooms, so our spend rate starts out low. It picks up towards the middle of the project, so in December and January, our spend rate accelerates, and we're spending the most amount of money at that time. And then as we near the end of the project, then that spend rate starts to drop off. We've completed deliverables, therefore we can release resources for the project. We're not using as many of the tools and equipment or facilities, so our spend rate starts to drop off. So this is an S kind of lying on its side, showing the typical spend rate for a project. This is the cost baseline, and we're estimating that in our initial estimates, we're going to spend $180,000 for this project when it's all said and done. So for the earned value practitioners, they would actually call this cost baseline, this S-curve, they would call this the performance measurement baseline. And it's really bringing in aspects of all 3 baselines all at once, isn't it? It's showing us what work packages are scheduled to be completed at what point. So it's aspects of the schedule, aspects of the scope are all being drawn in here, and what their cost estimates are at that particular point in time. So our budgeted completion is the estimate, the original estimate for what we plan to spend for this project, $180,000. And if we're at January 17th of 2012, then what we estimated to spend at this point in time on the cost baseline is $100,000. That's what we budgeted. That's what we've estimated to spend at this point in time on that date. Now suppose you've only completed 85% of the work that you had planned. So of all the different work packages that were planned to be completed at this point in time, maybe only 85% of the work has really been completed. So what you have earned at this point in time is 85% of what was budgeted, or $85,000 is what's been earned. That is your earned value at this point in time. And perhaps things cost you a little bit more than what you had budgeted originally. Maybe some of the tools and equipment, when you went to go purchase them or go lease them, prices had gone up and it cost you a little bit more money. Maybe some of the initial resources that you planned to bring in weren't available and you had to perhaps subcontract or swap in or bring in some more senior people, and labor rates were a little bit higher, and your spend rate, your costs were a little bit higher than what you had first estimated. So perhaps our actual costs are $110,000. So once we've got all these four variables determined at this point in time, then we can just plug these values into the different earned value equations and come up with some very interesting computations of variance. We can calculate in earned value terms schedule variance, cost variance. We can plug them into the performance indices, schedule performance index, cost performance index. We can do calculations of forecasts, estimated complete, where we think, based on our performance to date, where we think we're likely to end up for the project at the end, and calculate how much more work we have, what's the value of the work that's left to be done, estimate to complete. So earned value gives them some very nice ways to do these calculations of variance, calculations of performance index. And again, for the earned value practitioners, they say, if you're not doing this, you really don't know what your true value is that you've earned at this point in time. If you're just comparing what you've planned to spend at this point in time to what you've actually spent, you're really flying blind. You really don't know. Just because, suppose we had spent $100,000 at this point in time, and we plan to spend $100,000, does that really tell us that we're on budget? No. If we've only done 85% of the work, we're not on budget at all. So we need to bring in earned value to really see the real world, see where we are. So one of our classic indices that we want to calculate is cost performance index. And as you all know, CPI equals earned value divided by actual cost. And we just said our earned value is $85,000, our actual costs are $110,000. And if you do the division, then cost performance index is 0.77. So as you know, any decimal less than 1 is bad news, and any number greater than 1 is very good. So this is telling us, this CPI of 0.77 is telling us for every dollar we're spending on this project, oops, we're only getting 70 cents of value back. So not good at all. And again, there's many ways of projecting where you're going to end up overall for the project, our EAC. There's over 25 different equations for this, but one of the most simplistic, not so often used in the real world, but often on the PMP exam, because it's the most simple equations there. But one of the simplest way, if we're projecting that we're going to stay on this CPI, future performance is going to keep matching our performance to date, then EAC, estimated completion, the formula for it is BAC divided by CPI. And again, our original BAC is $180,000. If we divide that by our cost performance index to date, then whoops, we get a new EAC, an estimated completion of $233,766. This is saying if we stay at this current CPI, if we don't do some corrective actions, if we don't make some changes, we're going to end up spending $233,000 plus for this project at the end. Not good. So anyway, this is a real quick overview of some of the earned value equations and methodologies, why it's important. How does this apply to Agile? How would this work in Agile? Can we do this? Might like to do this very, very much. PMI is recommending very highly that we do earn value in all projects. And can we do this in Agile? No, we cannot, because we don't have the BAC, do we? We don't have, for the end of the project, we don't have this budget at completion. Reason? We don't know how many prototypes we're going to do. We don't know how many sprints or iterations we're going to do. We could figure out very accurately the planned value for the first iteration, perhaps the first 2 iterations. We know the schedule, we know the budget for each of these iterations, but we don't know how many iterations we're going to end up doing for the project. Therefore, we can't put together an overall, a complete time phase budget, a complete S-curve for the project overall. We don't know BAC, and without that, we can't do these nicer, we can't plug these numbers into the earned value equations for variance and performance indices and the forecasts. So just to follow up, since we don't have an accurate cost baseline defined early in the project in Agile, then we cannot do earned value as it's been traditionally conceived. We don't have this time phase budget, this S curve showing us budgeted completion, an estimate of budgeted completion for the end of the project, since we don't know how many iterations we're going to go through. So we can't do the normal computations we'd like with earned value of schedule variance, cost variance, the performance indices, the forecasts, EAC, ETC, TCPI, and such. So we can't do that. But if you go out to the website and you start Googling, using the search engines to look for earned value and Agile, you're going to see some very interesting articles. Some people have gotten very, very creative, and they're substituting some different concepts for calculating and doing forecasts, so calculating where you are now and kind of earned value techniques, and forecasting where you're going to likely end up. And so some very interesting stuff using burn down charts, using burn up charts, and look at your velocity, so look at the change in the burn down rate over time for the project. In some ways, this is kind of tracking ETC, estimate to complete, and putting it together in a burn down charts over time, and be able to project, be able to estimate when you're actually going to be done for the project. So some very interesting stuff, some very creative stuff, and it would be pretty cool, I think, to kind of add this in, some of these techniques into more classical ways of doing projects. Anyway, I've just provided a mentioning one particular article that I thought was quite interesting here, an article written by Anthony Cabri and Mike Griffiths, and providing the URL to their article. So I don't think there is any real consensus, any real agreement on which of these techniques in Agile work best. So that's all, it's still in the early formulation stages, I believe. But anyway, a lot of stuff, very interesting reading that's out there. I highly recommend going out and searching on some of these things.